Morning, everyone. Um, I'm Resti Saskia from Seven Psyche 002. We'll present about language, attitude, and representation. So, introduction. In introduction, language, language attitude. Definition of language attitude is this refer to how people feel or think about a language or how they judge it. It could be positive, negative, or neutral, depending on the context and the person experience. For example, someone might think a particular language sound beautiful or useful, while others may see it as hard to learn. While language representation, the definition is this is about how a language is sound or thought about in different situations. For example, maybe like a language can be represented in movie, book, or even social media, and how its sound can affect how people feel about it. Nah, what the important about the topic, the important of about the topic is understanding a language attitude and representation is important because they can shape how people use language and interact with others. Okay, move to the next slide. Next is language and representation, the role of representation in language study. So, what the meaning of the role of representation in language study? Representation play a key role in how we learn and use language. How a language is shown in media, books, our school can affect our understanding of it and how we feel about speaking it. For example, in positive representation of a language can encourage more people to learn it, while negative portrayal can discourage them based on statement of Brigita in 2002. The role of representation involve like a discipline. The first is language science. This will focus on studying how language work. It looks at how language are structured, how people use them, and how they evolve over time. And the second is cognitive science. This area study how the human mind works, including how we think, learn, and remember. It looks at how language is processed in our brain, how we understand it, and how we used to think. Okay, next is cross-disciplinary approach. In cross-disciplinary approach, by combining language studies, psychology, and cognitive theory, research can better understand how language influence and is influenced by our thoughts, emotion, and behavior. Okay, next is representation, a crossroad concept. In this section, I will explain about first is criticism of language and neutral instrument. Language is not just a neutral tool for communication only. It is shaped by people attitude, belief, and perception. This means that the way we use language reflect how we think and feel about it, rather than being a just simple, unbiased method of a communication. This is a theory from we have a example three theory from the expert. The first is Emily Durkheim. Durkheim believed that there are two types of representation, collective and individual. Collective representation are shared by a group of people like cultural belief, while individual representation are unique to each person. He argued that society shape our understanding of the world. While a statement from Moscow focus on how social representation, idea, and beliefs shared by a group affect people behavior, he saw that the way people think and act is influenced by this shared belief, including how language is used in society. Lastly, based on cognitive theory. Cognitive theory suggests that representations are the mental image or concept that link language to the world around us. This mental representation help understand and talk about the world, shaping how we think and communicate. And the third is social function of representation. Representation helps structure action in society by providing a common understanding of the world. They give people share idea and meaning, which help them communicate and cooperate with each other effectively. Through language, this representation become a code that people use to express thoughts, make decision, and take action together. Okay, in the next section, it's about attitude and opinions. Relation between representation and attitude. Okay, relation between representation and attitude. Attitude are how people feel or react towards something, either positively or negatively. These attitudes are shaped by how we represent or think about things, like language. For example, if someone has a positive representation of a language, they are more likely to have a positive attitude towards it. So, the first is we will explain about the second is linguistic attitude. Linguistic attitude this refer to how people feel about different language or ways of speaking from a people. Psychological theory suggests that our attitude towards language are closely linked to the way we mentally represent them. If someone view a language as beautiful or important, they are more likely to have positive attitude towards it. And then is key concept. Key concept from attitude and opinions. Key concept from attitude and opinion is like a belief. Belief are the information or idea people have that influence their opinion. For example, someone may believe that a certain language is difficult to learn, which might lead to a negative opinion of it. And second is stereotype in language. Stereotype are generalization about a group of people, and they can affect how people use and view language. For instance, like people might think that the speaker of a certain language are less intelligent or more skilled based on stereotype. The next section is stereotype. Stereotype, we have three parts. The first is definition and characteristic, influence of stereotype on linguistic behavior, stereotype in language learning. So, the first is what the definition and characteristic of stereotype. Stereotype are general idea or belief that people have about a group of people. This is a different with prejudice. These ideas are fake and often oversimplified, meaning they don't change easily. Because this is like a broad group of a people. Stereotypes are shaped by society and can influence how we think about others, including their language. So, the next is influence of stereotype on linguistic behavior. Influence stereotype in linguistic behavior. The first is positive versus negative stereotype and their social impact. Stereotype can be either positive or negative. Positive stereotype might make people think highly of language or its speaker, while negative stereotype can lead to discrimination or prejudice. Both types affect how people interact with each other and use language. Next is the role of stereotype in group cohesion and identity. Stereotype can play a role in helping group feel united. For example, a group might bond over their belief or attitude about their language. However, stereotype can also reinforce a sense of us versus them, which can impact relationship between different groups. Lastly is stereotype in language learning. Stereotype can affect how people learn language. If a person believes that a language is difficult or that speakers that language are uneducated, it can make them less motivated to learn it. Stereotype can also influence how learners interact with speakers from different groups, affecting communication and intergroup relation. Next is about the linguistic imagination. The linguistic imagination, we have a three part. The first is concept of linguistic imagination, linguistic identity, and norms and standard in language. The first is concept of linguistic imagination. The linguistic imagination refers to the way a person thinks about and connects with their language. It's about how people see their language as part of who they are and how it shapes their communication and interaction with others. And second is linguistic identity. Language play a big role in shaping a person's identity. The language someone speaks often reflect their cultural background, social group, and personal experience. It helps people feel connected to their community and influence how they are seen by others. Lastly is norms and a standard in language. Norm and standard in language, we have two parts. The first is objective versus subjective norms. Objective norms are the rules that people generally agree upon about how a language should be used, such as grammar rules. Subjective norms, on the other hand, are based on personal opinion and belief about how language should be spoken, like a really general ancestor or slang. The second is the role of evaluative perspective, communicational, and identity norms. Evaluative norm, this means like a DSR standard that judge language use based on personal or societal preference, like whatever a word is appropriate or polite. Perspective norms, these are strict rules about how language should be used, like the grammar rules that are taught in a school. And lastly, communicational norms. This focus on how effectively language is used to communicate and be understood. The next part is representation and ideology. Ideology. Representation and ideology. This is two part. The first is distinction between representation and ideology. Representation, this refer to a group of connective belief or idea people have about language. It focuses on how language is seen or understood, like whatever a language is viewed as important, useful, or beautiful. While ideology is a larger system or belief or idea that justify and support the norm and practice of society. It includes how language is used to reinforce social rules, power structure, and cultural value. For example, an ideology may support that idea that one language is superior to others in society. The second is language policy and ideology. Unilingualism as a social linguistic ideology is the belief that a society should have only one official language. This ideology can lead to policies that promote only one language, often ignoring or developing other languages spoken in the community. The role of ideology in shaping language policy and practice. Ideology influence how government create a language policies, such as deciding which language are taught in school or used in official setting. These policies can either promote language diversity or favor single dominant language based on the underlying ideological belief about language in society. Lastly is a conclusion. Summary of a key concept, implication for language learning and sociolinguistic research. Final talk, how these concepts shape language, policies, and practice. The first is summary of key concept. The concept discusses language attitude, representation, stereotype, and linguistic imagination are all connected. While implication for language learning and sociolinguistic research, understanding this concept help us see the social and cultural factors that affect language use. It so our belief and attitude shape how we learn and use language and how language influence our identity. For researchers, this helps them understand the deeper social dynamic of the language. Lastly, final touch. These ideas are crucial in shaping language policy and practice, especially in multilingual society. How language are represented, how a language are represented, value are regulated can impact which language thrive or decline. In diverse societies, this concept help with decision on language education, language right, and how different languages are represented or excluded. Okay, I think it's enough presentation from me about language and language representation and attitude. Uh, Thank you. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.